Alright, video response to a couple of videos, I guess. There's a couple other things I wanted to mention, so maybe I'll throw them on the end, a little bit of the physics crap or some other kind of shit. I just would do add-ons related to the last video. I don't think I want to do whole videos on those subjects, but anyway. Um, so, Professor Anton, they're really just a horrible video. It's got 23 likes, 2 dislikes. And it's basically just advocating for human beings lying to themselves. Let's just keep lying to ourselves. Let's talk in magical language about magical forces that exist in the universe, some special desire that we're all, even matter feels the desire for justice. Just absolute nonsense. So I'll play the second half of this video, because it's just complete and utter babble. So he's just basically defending lying. Just keep lying. Find some kind of astrology, find some kind of fake nonsense to believe in, and that's not ridiculous. But what is ridiculous is to analyze life, look at it, and say, what is its function, what does it do, and what is its potential? And if you draw the conclusion that it's way too expensive for way too little product, you're ridiculous, even though no one's made a counter argument explaining how that's ridiculous beyond just saying, we don't think so. We. Yeah, right, we the silly ridiculous people don't think so. So yeah, so going to Mariana made another video on community. And so, she talks about contentiousness and all this stuff, and well, this is sort of the evolution of any medium like this, right? You start off as just being people. You show up at a party or something, and everybody says hi to everybody, and everybody gets along until everybody kind of finds out what the agenda is. That guy's agenda is child molesting. That guy's agenda is some kind of other bullshit. That guy wants to eat you for dinner. I mean, you find out what these people really are made of, and then you start saying, fuck that. So that's part of the problem with the aging of the medium, is that we find out too much about each other. We put each other in categories, and good guy, bad guy, and that's just inevitable. And now the patterns have been set. We already know now ahead of time what to look for, and we can categorize people so much quicker and easier. So yeah, this is just the evolution of the medium, and this whole social networking thing is kind of lame anyway, isn't it? I mean, yeah, if you want to do Twitter on YouTube, fine. I don't have any much use for that. Hi, how is everybody? Cat, this is my cat, Georgie. And, we're together on the internet. Isn't it cool? I mean, you can do that shit, but who cares? Okay? I don't know. There's a community for that. Chit-chat. You can have like a chit-chat club or something. Small talk. Bibbly-babbly-boo. But yeah, otherwise there's this philosophy crap, and that's another area where there's going to be an evolution of the conversation. It's not going to keep staying at the same level. It's going to start off in nursery school, and then it's going to go to first grade, second grade, third grade. It's going to start evolving with a higher and higher standard for what is called a relevant point to make. And you can't show up when we're at grade 6 and show up with first grade bibble babble, because everybody's just going to say, we already been there and done that, jackass, like 7,000 times. So again, that's part of the problem with the aging. I mean, it's maturing as a medium, and that maturity just isn't going to make room for people just showing up saying, hi, I haven't paid any attention, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but here's my opinion. Well, that really isn't going to work, and it's kind of rude. So if you want to play the I'm new game, maybe you should go to some new room where everybody's new. Just say, don't anybody who has any experience on the internet watch this video. Because if you have any experience on the internet, you've been there and done this about 7 million times, and this just doesn't have any value anymore. So anyway, that's my critique of the critique. So I think it can evolve into something much more powerful. I mean, you might think it's getting weaker. I think it's getting more powerful. And I think the medium is going to eventually be the place where if you have a real game, if you have a real argument to make, you're going to have to show up in these arenas to prove it. And we're going to separate the men from the boys kind of thing. Boys. The cowards and the people who don't have the stuff to make the argument. And so again, and then I'll just make this final critique. In this video, this guy calls my philosophy calls me ridiculous. He doesn't say my name, but everybody knows who he's talking about. And he calls it ridiculous. Alright, so now the word ridiculous, that's okay to use. If I say fucktard, that's not okay. If I say idiot, that's not okay. But ridiculous is okay, right? So that's the standard I'm supposed to know, is that we're all going to just play with little phony, fake word games. So I'm supposed to expect that mature people aren't able to tell the difference and realize that those two insults are exactly the same. That there is no distinction between calling somebody ridiculous and calling somebody an idiot, or a moron, or a fool, or a fucking asshole. That there really isn't any difference. And if you think there's a difference, you're an asshole and a fool, and you're ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, if you haven't elevated to a grade level where you can handle, okay, vernacular, you know, that using all the words, as Clarence Darrow would say. The English language is a poor enough means of communication. We should use all the words we have in defense of saying it straight. And just saying, when you think somebody's an asshole, you say you're an asshole. You don't play some game and say you're ridiculously ignorant and pretend you didn't just insult somebody. So bullshit, I call it, once again. So anyway, so let's do the professor. So this video is just horrible. The first half was just nothing. You know, lamenting how, you know, whatever. I can't do this. I won't do this. I might do this. I will do this. Whatever. But just leading up to this, again, this defense of nothing more than, look, we've been telling lies to each other forever as human beings, so let's keep the lies going. And that's all he's saying here. He's not saying there's some kind of truth, okay, that, like, you know, if we can take it, you know, like we have the option of looking at life clinically and intelligently and finding something good. He doesn't go there. He basically just says he says, the implication of what he's saying is quite clear. That the fact is, if you don't make up some kind of bullshit nonsense, that, yeah, you're stuck with a rotten eggs. Shit, sulfur dioxide.
You know, everyone from, you know, people like Gandhi, you get Jiddu Krishnamurti, you do get other people who try to teach a pathless path that's against organized religion, to be sure, but it also has a great, you know, deal to say about what is a person's meaningful relationship with the meaningfulness of this mysterious event that all said.
Okay, so there's a contention that it's a mysterious event. Okay, it's not really a mysterious event. All right, it's chemistry. That's what it is. Okay, compounds on Earth create all kinds of stuff. It creates. There's gold as an element. There's rubies. There's emeralds. There's all kinds of things in there. There's crystal, all kinds of different stalagmites, stalactites. Okay, it's not mysterious. We know that there will be phenomenon. That's what chemistry does. It creates phenomenon.
And done. No one really has the final answer or clue on what it is. I mean,
Well, it says you. So we have no clues about the origins of our existence, and the fact that the elements combine to create compounds. The compounds have almost an infinite variety of arrangements, and that those arrangements can have unique character. That you can create something like an emerald, and it has unique character. It's very different from just a plain old rock. And you can see the difference. But we understand that the difference is just an arrangement, a mechanical arrangement.
Watched a couple of videos today, and I'll see if I can post some links to them. Okay, at any rate, the thing I wanted to talk about was what would be a speculative way of thinking about the divine.
There you go. So right there. So another contention that I have to somehow, as a human being, it is not ridiculous for me to think about something called the divine. I'm supposed to not only assume its existence, I'm supposed to somehow relate to that concept at all. What the hell is a divine? What the hell is that? So you throw a word out here, a big giant word, divine. What the hell does that mean? What is it? What is that? And it's not, and you'll call somebody else ridiculous when you just throw a word like divine out there and expect somebody to know, to have it right in their head. I'm supposed to know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm supposed to know what a divine is. Yeah, no, not even close.
That, I don't know, that sort of works for those who still have such sympathies, and it eschews anything like a dogma. So there's no virgin births, there's no creator God, there's no life after death, no...
Right, so you get rid of all the aspects of the religion that can be disproven except for the magical magic. So yeah, you get rid of all the elements of the religion that are ridiculous on their face, like special places you go and play hopscotch. Okay, so yeah, that's silly. Let's get rid of that. And so you get rid of all this silly stuff and you keep some kind of kernel of magic, right? Of just made up fantasy, purpose, inspiration, initiation. There was a creator. You just won't define him or describe him, and that way nobody can say that guy didn't do it. So if you give no description of the perpetrator except to say he's invisible,
no divine intervention. I think what you have is instead...
So you just said search for the divine, and now you say no divine intervention. So which is it? Is there a divine intervention or isn't there? Why would I search for a divine that didn't intervene? Why would a non-intervening divine have any relevance to me whatsoever? Why would I go looking for a non-intervening divine?
Something like this. There's a fact that can't be denied. Here we are. Now, what is this? How long has it been going on? What were the initial conditions that precipitated into it?
Right, you know these facts, right? You just think that something pushed it. You still think it's a button that something pushed. That it's not just a consequence of the permutations of chemistry. That yes, something can have 1 gazillion to 1 odds against it happening. I could throw a wrench into space and I could throw a nut into space, right? A bolt. So I throw a nut and a bolt into space and I throw a wrench into space randomly. And there is a probabilistic chance that the wrench will actually hit the nut, right, and turn it clockwise. It's possible. Okay? I mean, it's going to take 1,000,000 throws. A zillion throws? I don't know how many throws of the wrench and the nut into space it's going to take for me to create the circumstance where that happens. But the truth is, it can happen. And that's what we are. We're a product of a possibility, not a probability, not a, oh yeah, it happens all the time, you know, 2 DNA molecules smash into each other and a third molecule zips them in half, and, you know, whatever the initial conditions were, where that had to be the perfect storm conditions to create this thing called a replicating cellular entity. Yeah, never happened twice, just happened the one single time in known universal history, as far as we know, as far as we have any evidence of. One single time was a replicating cell created from non-replicating matter.
I mean, what led up to all of this, including what began the beginning?
Right, so we have to ask the same question about what created rubies. So let's say, okay, what began the ruby formation? What created the first rubies? What forms of the compression created the heat and the pressure that creates the rubies? Why was the pressure created? Why does this phenomenon exist? No, we don't have to ask any of those questions. They're irrelevant. We know how they got here. This is what elements and chemistry do. Alright, it's crude things banging around into each other, and it's like 1,000,000 monkeys at 1,000,000 typewriters. Sooner or later, somebody's going to type fucktard.
Then we sort of get to these weird aporias at beginnings. But I think the...
well, I'm just saying there's no... It's totally unweird, okay? If you want to pay attention to the volume of evidence, all the evidence, all credible evidence that exists, points to the fact that it's just a chemical reaction that initiated our existence, the existence of life on Earth. And zero evidence, zero evidence that has any credibility beyond somebody telling a story, demonstrates any alternative theory. Even conforms an alternative theory. You can't even construct a theory that has rational continuity, let alone demonstrate one with evidence.
It would say that there seems to have been, at least for a long time now, very long time, some kind of energy life force.
There you go, energy. So here, you're making a contention that has absolutely no scientific, evidentiary credibility. Not one shred of evidence of any special life force. It doesn't exist. You can't in any way describe what it would be made out of. There's no evidence of it whatsoever. No, nothing. You have absolutely nothing. You've just invented a magical force that somehow exists, that somehow has shaped us, in spite of the fact that all the evidence demonstrates that we've been shaped by 4 billion years of evolution, and that all we are is a reactive machine, a bunch of little tiny knee-jerks, billions of knee-jerks inside of our brain, calculate a function and create what is a personality, and created the sentence I just spoke. The sentence I just spoke has been created over my whole entire lifespan, has conformed and shaped that sentence. And that's just the fact. It didn't come from a life force. It didn't come from a magic dust. It didn't come from a sparkly sparkly. It didn't come from any alternative source. It came from a coalition of filters, a mechanism of structure that's as real as the eddy in a stream or the cyclonic action of a tornado. These things happen for reasons. They do not happen for no reason. They are not manifestations of magical forces. They are manifestations of physical phenomenon. Okay, the atmosphere has to have the moisture in it. There has to be the temperature variation. There has to be the right conditions, or it's not going to happen.
I don't know what it is. It's an energy life force, and it has...
Yeah, okay, so what is that? So what am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to say to somebody who tells me, you might as well say it's the Martian brain control function. The Martian brain control function makes us think that life is unpleasant sometimes, and that so it's if we get the Martian brain force out of our head, life is really wonderful. Is that what I'm supposed to believe? Because you say so? I mean, this is just absolute made-up fairy tales, and you're selling this as if this is what human beings should do. Let's tell each other preposterous stories about magical forces, and that's what responsible, intelligent human beings are supposed to do on this fucking idiotic planet. And you're going to call me ridiculous. You're going to talk about magical life forces, and then you're going to call me ridiculous. I mean, the irony is disgusting. I mean, it's oxymoronic irony.
Different ways of striving for, I guess, order in some way.
Yeah, well, we know that the striving is made up of the function of desire. We know that organisms have this function of desire. We know that the two strongest desires are food and sex, so it's about consumption and reproduction, the first two elements, and that these other elements come into play later with our addictions, basically to this accomplishment notions and the mechanisms of our ego redefining goals, reestablishing what we want, not what we need, but what we want. And that the rest of the mechanism is just scheming solutions. Obviously, we seek solutions because we want to get to the end. We want to have what we want, and we don't want to get eaten by something in the process. So yeah, we're calculating solutions. We want control. We want to know what the right path is. Duh.
It's an order striving, and I think one way to think about it is it's an imaginative impulse, and the impulse is defined by the yearning for justice.
Right. So I mean, in my video, I said the problem was that deserve has nothing to do with it, and we want deserve to have something to do with it, and that's why people gravitate to a religion, is because it's promising this deserve thing in the end. So we're in agreement on the fact that people want that to be true. What we're completely disagreeing about is whether we should rely on fables and lies as solutions to the problem, that we can just pretend deserve has something to do with it when it doesn't. Or, in your case, pretend that it doesn't matter whether it sucks. That somehow the DNA molecule knows better than we do. Somehow the fact that it initiated means it's automatically a good thing, and any scrutiny you might apply or any critique you might apply to efficiency is somehow irrelevant because the molecule knows what it's doing. Or the molecule has more credibility than we do.
However that justice would be perceived from within the confines of the particular embodiment, the particular perspective, the particular situatedness that that energy force had been placed in or curtailed into.
Right, energy forces now. So again, we're talking more magical talking. This is exactly what is just so corrosive. This is nothing but religion. It's just, you're just making this crap up. Okay, there is no magical forces. There's no magical understanding. There's no magical desires. There's no magical function. All right, everything that takes place inside your brain is a perfectly understandable phenomenon.
So if you look at life in all of its manifestations, everything from earliest life, bacteria, whether you're looking at, massive dinosaurs, that age, or the Cambrian explosion, mammals, all the way up to humanity. All life, it's as if it's an imaginative impulse.
Yeah, so again,
operating
I mean,
with a yearning.
An imaginative impulse operating with a yearning. Okay, so now microbes had all that. And they didn't. They were just chemical machines. That's all they were. Reactive chemistry. That's it. You want to pretend they were something more than a mobile gun, but that's all they were a mobile gun. Again, you could find if you take a time-lapse photo of a ball in a pool on a windy day, you'll see it move around just like a microbe. It's a mechanical function. It's a robot. It doesn't imagine anything. It doesn't have any brain. It can't imagine. Imagination takes place in a brain. And so, yeah, where sentience begins, where contemplation and all that stuff, I think quite obviously reptiles didn't have huge brains, dinosaurs didn't have huge brains, but they definitely had brains. I mean, they definitely had a lot of moving parts, and they apparently moved them pretty efficiently for hundreds of millions of years.
For something like a sense of justice. And when I say a sense of justice, I mean a sense of what equals what, and how to balance.
Yeah, well, again, all these primitive life forms are not balancing anything. Even the mammals aren't really doing balanced equations, okay? They really aren't. They don't have the context to understand balancing these equations. So most of the time, their balancing they're doing is really simple, all right? They're not judging the real value, they're just judging the desire value. And that's what they're motivated by. So they're just balancing how much fear do I feel versus how much hunger do I feel. And one of those things is going to win in the end, and they're going to move or not move. But they're not going to be doing the same kind of value equations we're capable of.
Things out. See, balancing things out, and the scales of justice are sort of an interesting visual image. And it's so interesting the way that the notion of justice emerges in history, how it changed so radically. I mean, the notion of eye for an eye versus turn the other cheek, and
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of rational, you can have theories about what is worth what, okay, and that's sort of the point, is those theories have now evolved. We understand that we don't have slavery anymore, we are obnoxious we find noxious the idea of gender persecution, So I mean, obviously, quite obviously, our understanding has evolved. Our memes, information, knowledge has gotten bigger and bigger. We have more of it to work with, and so now we have a better picture of reality, so we understand better. And your implications in this stuff is that somehow there isn't a conclusion that's reachable. And no, there is a conclusion that's reachable. There is a right and a wrong answer to some of these questions, and it's just nonsense to pretend not, that there isn't. That everyone just makes it up.
Way that we think of mercy and forgiveness as, or trying to live.
They're just strategies, okay? I mean, we can bring up like the Indonesian example again of a justice system, right? I can create a justice system that is really cheap, right? Because what it does is it basically so horribly treats a violator of a crime that no one will want to commit the crime. So if I take a jaywalker, right, and I cut his nuts off and I gut him in the public square, and he screams freedom or whatever, I mean, whatever, I just torture him, all right? I tie his arms and legs to horses and just rip him to pieces. Obviously, that'll work, as a justice system that's cheap, right? Because, you just scare the fuck out of people. But the liability of that is that, you're just scaring the fuck out of people, and what you're doing to the criminal is so bad. What you're doing to the one or two people stupid enough to ever jaywalk that you actually catch is so bad, that, is torture justified? Can you ever defend the torture you put the individual through? Are you doing anything in your society of enough value to justify the torture you just imposed? And the answer I would give would be no. Just as I would say that slavery is hugely productive. You can leap over decades. You can have decades of advancement in just a number of years. So you can save 100 years in terms of progress. You can gain 100 years advantage in how you progress as a civilization through slavery. So it's hugely productive. But is the price worth it? And obviously we've concluded, no, of course you can't justify the price. You created so much pain that whatever gain you got out of it is negated.
The best life that one can as revenge, is these notions.
Again, these are just theories again of justice and what gives you better outcomes. And someone could argue that if we all did the do unto others as you'd have others do unto you, rather than the do unto them before they do unto you kind of philosophy. So if we did the thing where we say, okay, I'll put it out, I'll sacrifice and I'll risk on the side of goodness. And the idea is that if that catches on as an idea or a meme, then we will all become good because we've all investing in the good, and so then we'll have less likelihood of ever being harmed. But if we do it the other way, the punitive way, then everybody finds excuses to call their cause a revolution, or they all call themselves freedom fighters, even though they're actually just terrorists, or they're actually just takers. They're just raper and pillagers, and so justice gets disguised as some other purpose. But I mean, that's the theme. You're just saying what theory of justice works better. And again, so it's just like an argument between draconian punishment for crime and more proportional punishment for crime, and which one produces more result. Yes, you end up with more crime because of the more proportional response to crime, but you also end up with less net suffering.
So what it means to yearn for justice, or when people talk about consistency theories in psychology, I think they're largely talking, people like Heider, balance theory, or Leon Fessinger's cognitive dissonance theory, Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean, there's all these different ways that consistency operates. Now, we could point to discrepancies between and among those particular theories, but what's interesting is that beneath and underneath it is this yearning for something that will be recognized by by the organism, by the entity, as equating what otherwise would be unequal.
Right, so you're just looking for some way to balance an equation, right? So that's all we're talking about. You're just saying, is this efficient enough? And so rational people like me explain why you're consuming more gasoline than the mileage you're producing, and therefore the engine should not be turned on because it's wasteful, it's inefficient, it's insufficiently efficient. And you're just using some sort of circle of life bullshit and just saying, well, the circle of life says otherwise. Well, the circle of life is not a theory. It doesn't explain where you got those value notions from, except from the fact that you just made them up. You said, because I like living and I think the risk is worth it because I'm an addict, that you should like being a heroin addict. And I'm saying, fuck you, why should I like being an asshole?
Somehow it brings about a state of justice. The haggles right now in the contemporary world and the different views of God, right? They seem to be different views of what justice is. And
this is such a pile of crap anyway. We know that most people aren't looking for justice for anybody but themselves. Okay, so again, you're giving religion way too much credit and giving people's motivations for becoming religious too much credit. Because most people are takers and they're just looking for something to give them license to take.
And it's as if the particular situations that we're in, with all their details, the fine-grained differences that make a difference, right? These are part of what make justice have the particular flavor or tenor that it does.
Well, again, so he's just talking almost like this subjective crap again, like somehow this isn't some sort of scientific equation that can be written up about what the hell is worth what, and what is what's a rational appreciation of value and what's an irrational one. I would argue that diamonds that people wear on their fingers they're not even close to being a rational value equation. And if people looked at it in any way honestly, they would realize that, why would I send a guy 3 miles down the ground to put a stupid an ornament on a finger? It's ludicrous. Why kill people so you can have ornaments on your finger? That's insane. Stupid.
And I think when we look out at the rest of the world, it's easy to say, oh my word, there's so much injustice. I think this is where so much of the notion of the afterlife comes from, particularly belief in heaven. I mean, if you're watching this video right now, this is my guess, you've had a pretty good life. Now maybe you've had some setbacks, you've had some health conditions, life hasn't been all rosy, you've had emotional traumas, you've had death and loss, pains.
Well, whatever. This is all just subjective crap, right? I've had a pretty good life relative to other people, but I'd never say it was a good life. I'd never do that, okay? Not even when I was very young would I say it was a good life. Because, it's way too sloppy, way too messy, way too inefficient. The fact that other people have it worse does not mean my life is good.
You've had fun days, you've had your mix. But you look around and you know that there are a lot of people who've had it a lot worse than you. People born in a third world country to abusive parents, maybe born with a disease, a contagious disease, syphilis, something like this. Malnourished, no opportunities, very little conditions there for prosperity. And I think when we look at...
And like an animal, they will find a way to survive it. But that's all they're doing. They're just like an animal finding a way to survive. Because that's what we're made to do. Not because it's logical or sensible, but only because it's what the mechanism does. The mechanism lives. And it can only be killed. It can only be stopped if the mind says it's stupid.
That the discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots, I think most of us, we feel some sort of pain, and we say this is not just, and we might want to say, what can I do? I would like to fix it, And then some people, they try to fix it, and they feel it. Other people say, look, it's more than I can do, and they say it can't be fixed. And that's how they think about it in terms of the justice. Other people...
Yeah, so yeah, this will be the other people category. Other people just make up crap and pretend it doesn't need to be fixed. And that's the category you fit in. They just find a way to evade the problem by just saying the problem doesn't exist. I'll just turn into a circle of life and say it's all okay.
I think they fantasize that there will be justice sometime, some other place. This yearning for an ultimate justice at the end of all which seems so unjust.
Yeah, look, it's just a rational fucking process, okay? When you become logically, when you become intelligent, when you have knowledge, you can model the game. You can see the model of how the game works, and then you can figure out that, what do you mean? Okay, it just wipes out pieces. These pawns get pushed out of here, this gets wiped out of here, this gets wiped out of here, so a king and a queen can fight over who gets to stand on top of the game board and say, I win for 10 minutes, and then you start all over again, just starting to wipe pieces out. You can look at the game and you can say, oh my God, that's preposterous. All of this waste, all of this carnage, so some idiot can sit in the stands with his number 1 finger and his team colors on and saying, we won. Yeah, you won today and you're going to lose tomorrow. So what the fuck, idiot?
The cruelty, the hardship, the degree to which those people who have done nothing wrong, arguably some hard-working...
Alright, had to change cameras. Anyway, alright, so now we're at, okay, so the injustice of one guy gets hit by the drunk driver, one guy is just a lying con artist, and he gets away with it for life. So, terribly unfair, terribly stupid, and the answer to that dilemma, that problem of, the very problem of existence, the idea that one kid can be born with no arms and legs and one kid can be born okay, and that somehow we can say it's all okay. Why? Because earthworms get eaten and then they get shit and then they eat the shit and then they get shit by the shit and then a parasite eats a snail's brain and it's all okay. Something like that. Some circle of life crap. Circle of life is just a pretty way of saying mass murder. Alright, so now we've converted mass murder into circle of life. Yeah, you're just playing silly word games. Nope, made a mistake there. Didn't mean to turn the camera off.
Taking money, exploiting people, living in comfortable ways of affluence and enjoying privilege, and it's abuse of power. I think we see all of it. And again, it's not just what the evils that people do, just the natural degree to which not everyone gets the same length of straw. Some people just get a raw deal. I think many people, they think that unless some kind of amends is made for that, this is just too unjust to tolerate. And that's where they end up going. There has to be life after.
Yeah, well, whatever. So you're just saying if some people come to that conclusion, they're ridiculous. That's what you're basically saying. Well, they're ridiculous if they don't invent a God. If they invent a God to solve the problem not solving it, you know, they solve it with a fake solution, a lie. They just make up some other shit to put on this side of the equation to make the equation balance. Then they're okay. So if I make up a God and say God will take care of it and so I'll be okay with it. But if I don't make up a God and I realize that it's unacceptable, then I'm ridiculous. I mean, that's what you're saying here, Professor, quite clearly. And it's a stupid thing to say. It's just goddamn fucking ignorant.
This one. There has to be. Because otherwise the world is just too cruel. It's too painful.
Well, like I said, you later on will just say anybody who believes that it's too cruel and too painful is ridiculous.
I mean, I think the question that I would want to raise, you know, which obviously I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't believe in an afterlife. I think
you do believe in a before life, though, quite clearly. Quite clearly, you believe in some kind of thing that makes replicating matter matter. That somehow Earthlings are critically important. Martians aren't too damn important. Moonikins aren't too damn important. Venetians aren't too damn important. But yes, Earthlings are really important, and they've got to keep doing it. They've got to keep playing the game, because if they don't keep playing the game won't be played, and there won't be this horrible injustice, and there won't be this disgusting suffering, and what else do we lose? Oh, that's right. There won't be any American Idol. Fuck. Can't live without that. Yeah, can't be non-existent without that. The universe must have American Idol.
That there is the idea of the afterlife. Oh, it's a beautiful piece of the imagination toward justice. The sort of justice.
Well, I mean, it's a silly. Okay, the religious descriptions of the afterlife, the two biggest religions in the world, basically say we're going to torture you for eternity because you didn't say the words "I love you, God." That's how silly the religion is. Okay, it isn't like Indonesia cheap, like let's just, cut the hands off of shoplifters. It's not even that insane. It's even more insane than cutting your hands off for shoplifting. It's so fucking insane. And they call that justice. So their search for justice, their yearning for justice, gravitates them to religions that persecute people for eternity. That doesn't make any sense, does it? So obviously it's not a yearning for justice. It's a yearning for their own special interest. Somehow I'm going to make a deal with God. I am going to make a superstitious deal. I'm not going to step on God cracks, and God is going to give me all the birthday cake.
Imagination machinery, that's the impulse of life itself, sort of seeking out the, I will eat food and it will leave digestible crap in the wake, and on the condition that I myself will be devoured by others. I mean, the cycle of life is an interesting.
So that's the word you use for mass murder. Mass murder is interesting. Yeah.
Form of ecological balance.
So it balances out. So as long as everything kills everything, everything is okay. Yeah, right.
I think there are ways to think about the yearning for justice and to ask, what is justice? And are we approaching the kinds of technological conditions, the social conditions, where we can help bring about a more just world? I don't think that we are, quotes.
Yeah. Can we do blah, 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 blah? And yeah, it'll just be lip service, okay? And you're not going to do anything to be able to create the solution to these problems. Somebody's going to have the beachfront property. Somebody's going to have the model wife, the trophy wife. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And you're not going to fix the nature of the life game. And that's the nature of it.
Gods. I think that Jason Silva he's got kind of bad read of Becker, a little bit of a bad read of Becker, but he says God. He says that Becker says we're gods with anuses. No, he says Becker says we're angels with anuses. But yeah.
Well, why should I pay any attention to anybody who says we're either one of those things? Because we're obviously not any one of those things. But we do have a measure of power. The game is ours now. Okay. When we were dumb animals, we were just victims. We were just maze runners. Well, now we've stepped out of the maze, and now we can change the maze. Now it's our choice. If the suffering happens, if the injustice happens, it happens because we allow it to happen. So it's on our hands now. The blood is on your hands, Professor.
We're sort of sub-divinities, right, in some way. We have, to the extent that we're part of everything that's ever been, we are part of that original imaginative impulse.
Original imaginative impulse. Again, what is that? What the hell? Why do I have to accept the existence of this thing? This imaginary, fake, made up, 3-word bullshit. Why do I have to accept the existence of this magical impulse thingy?
That through every cell and every fiber and every subatomic vibration, yearns for.
Well, again, so where's the evidence for this? Where is the evidence for this whatever a subatomic vibration is, and where is this evidence that any of those things can yearn for anything? What the fuck does any of this crap mean? Why is this supposed to mean something for somebody who's mastered 5th grade earth science?
Justice yearns, however that is perceived.
However that is perceived by things that can't possibly perceive. Again, how does this make any sense? All right, we have these billions, hundreds of billions of neurons. We're perceiving because of those neurons. We're not perceiving because we have anuses and hearts and organs and all this other shit. We're perceiving because we have neurons and that they're working. They're not asleep or unconscious or in a persistent vegetative state.
From whatever localized manifestation perception can occur.
Well, again, so what am I supposed to do with that? Where in science do I find the existence of these other manifestations of perception? The perceiving bottle, the perceiving cup of coffee, the perceiving what? What else is perceiving, Professor?
I don't think it has to align with the human notion of justice. No, it may be that
a human notion of justice. You mean the human calculation of justice? You mean the different variations of understanding or calculation of what the hell our psychiatric function is, and whether or not there is any kind of purpose in being addicted to heroin? I'd say there's no kind of purpose in that existence.
Truly just cosmos would seem utterly cruel. I mean, and I don't mean...
So they just made that up. So somehow if we had a world that actually imposed what you deserve, you actually got what you deserve, one where you could actually make clear choices and completely informed choices, that somehow that would be a cruel world. No, I don't think so.
An utterly just cosmos as viewed from the purview of some supernatural viewer from outside. I mean the sum total of justices as articulated across all of the different manifestations of life. When you take the sum of all of those, what justice looks like may look nothing like what we would aspire to as human justice.
Well, again, I don't even know what human justice is, so right there you already blew it all up, right? There's no such thing as a consistent human justice. So what the hell does that mean? That's the whole argument here. Some people are making justice out of gods and voodoo and nonsense and idiotic circle of life crapola, and other people are saying, no, there is no justice. If I'm gaining my satisfaction by torturing something else, that's not justice. That's fucking injustice.
Right? And maybe that human justice would say, oh, that's an utterly cruel justice. Let's change that. Yeah, I see some people who have ridiculous views that, they perhaps want a world that their notion of justice would be a world in which most organisms just couldn't live. They wouldn't find that.
Yeah, they wouldn't have a justification in laying their eggs in shit. That's the argument, right? They can't commit the crime of irresponsibility, of doing something that creates the opportunity for injustice. They have to do it right, or they not do it at all. That's the scenario. That's right. No one gets short straws if you just stop pulling straws. You want to stop injustice? Well, stop pulling straws.
It is balanced at all.
So just be clear, he called it ridiculous. So you're ridiculous if you find that the injustices in the world are unacceptable. You are ridiculous. And you're not ridiculous, though, if you invent a god to solve the equation. So if you invent a fake god that will create justice, then you're not being ridiculous. But you're being ridiculous if you don't invent a fake god to resolve the dilemma. If you accept the dilemma as existing, if you accept the dilemma as being epistemic to the condition of being alive, you're ridiculous.
All right, so went on way too long there. Not sure if I'm going to make a video for a while. If that disappoints anybody, I got lots of old videos, and hope everyone is well. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, right, your old videos. that have also been taken care of, dealt with, answered, and you haven't responded to the people who have responded to you. But whatever, no obligations. But I'm just saying, you show up and make a video where you expect people to understand what divine is, and inspired energy, and all these other special magical ideas, and that's it. You're just going to leave it there. People are just expected to know what those things are and why they're established facts that make it ridiculous if you don't make those things up. If I'm not willing to make up those fake things to somehow balance the equation, then I'm ridiculous. I think that's a smug and incredibly ignorant opinion. How's that? I could just say it's fucktarded and you're a stupid cunt. But no, I'll just say smug and ignorant. Oh, I forgot physics add-on kind of video thing. Yeah, I forgot about it. Alright, so anyway, I did the video about the radioactivity thing, and I just wanted to point out that there's lots, some guy was doing some counter-argument. I wasn't, I don't mind that you do that. You point out that something probably isn't true because of this experiment or that experiment. So all I was trying to point out is that there's different variables that are going to decide the condition of individual atoms that are radioactive. So I could argue that a radium atom has these unstable orbits, and that the instability is created just as a phenomenon, just as I used previously in this video an example of throwing a wrench into space and a nut into space, and the two things could collide theoretically. And that could be the function of the orbits. The orbits are unstable because of the very fact that every 1 in every 4 trillion cycles of the orbits, 2 electrons collide and the atom is degraded because the electron is destroyed and it is changed from one form or an isotope to a non-isotope or whatever. So and that could be what's built into the probability. What's the probability of there being a collision because the 2 orbits have a tiny section of each other where they collide, where there's a possibility of a collision. So that could be the structure of a radioactive element. It's just the fact that the orbits are so large in the outer shell that they have a slight overlap, and in that slight overlap there's a possibility of 2 electrons colliding. That would explain half-lives and all this other stuff. It just has to do with the probability of there being a collision based on what percentage of the orbits intersect. So I'm just saying, but there could be lots of factors that decide the condition of these atoms, and all these factors are perfectly within the realm of cause and effect and determinism, in the sense that where the initial atom that becomes an isotope was in a certain cycle at the point where all of a sudden a new electron is attached to it. It has to be it's in a certain condition when the new condition is created, and that previous condition is going to have something to do with the new condition and the likelihoods of different things happening. So I'm just saying that there are these variables that can be identified, and the variables we can understand. So I'm just saying, based on the fact that we can understand the variables, we don't need to create some sort of random event. We can understand that the event isn't random. It's only random in statistical terms, but it doesn't randomly happen. It doesn't spontaneously happen. It happens because there is a inevitability of it happening based on the structure, and you're just waiting for the permutations to play out. So it's like rolling dice. It's going to happen. You're going to roll dice, and certain patterns are going to arrive. Like I said, it's not even a bad example, because theoretically, if you roll the dice exactly certain ways, they will always come up a certain way. But like I said, we know that these variables are knowable, is all I'm saying. The variables aren't mysterious, let's just put it that way. It's not that we can know them with our current technology, it's that we can understand them and model them as not being spontaneous or random. That they are in a precondition, and then their condition changes, and then they just play out the time, and the time will dictate when the collision will take place. Just like in our universe, asteroids collide into planets, and they do it not randomly or spontaneously. They do it because the physics dictate it. And they were determined millions of years ago. If you knew all the facts, you would be able to predict the fact that they are going to terminate in a planet. So yeah, it's not that. So anyway, I don't. It's okay. You can counter argue. I'm just saying that I wasn't really making a hard argument. I was just making an argument in defense of the idea that there's lots of ways to explain the phenomenon of radiation, and the fact that you don't need to rely on any kind of random or spontaneous or non-deterministic function. Right. Okay. Till next time.